Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Handayani Binti Azis Efendi and my metric number is A174194. In this video, I will talk about my final year project entitled Postmortem PCR Results and PMCT Findings of Lungs Malaysian COVID-19 Death in 2020 to 2021. Today's agenda include introduction, objectives, problem statement, methodology, expected results, and milestones. First, introduction. Forensic science is an important part of the criminal justice system because it applies scientific principles and techniques to criminal justice issues, especially when it comes to the collection, examination, and analysis of physical evidence. The difference between traditional science and forensic science is forensic science applies proven scientific methodologies and procedures to legal issues. Forensic pathology is a field of forensic science that analyzes the dead body using a post-mortem examination or autopsy to determine the cause and manner of death. The autopsy comprises dissecting the body carefully to look for injury patterns, disease, or poisoning that could indicate the cause of death. Forensic pathologists are not only limited in the hospital morgue, but they are also called to the crime scene to conduct a preliminary examination of the body and perhaps make an initial diagnosis of the postmortem period, which is the time since death. In addition to that, forensic pathologists also frequently collaborate with other forensic scientists, such as forensic toxicologists and forensic radiologists. As an example, collaboration with forensic toxicologists is to establish whether if any compounds are present in the corpse that may have caused or contributed to death. According to the World Health Organization (WHO), cases of pneumonia of unknown cause were linked to a seafood wholesale market and were initially reported amid an outbreak of respiratory virus cases in Wuhan City, China on 31st December 2019. Through person-to-person transmission, COVID-19 has quickly spread across China, causing an epidemic and a rising number of cases in other countries around the world. The virus is zoonotically transmitted as the source of zoonotic transmission has been identified as raw and uncooked animal meat in which the Wuhan province live animal market has been responsible for the first human infection case. With current numbers of 537 million cases and 6.31 million death cases worldwide, social quarantine, or more popularly known as lockdowns, coupled with social distancing, has become an almost standard protocol in the control of COVID-19 spread across the world. Based on the title, I am going to focus on PCR tests and PMCT findings of the lungs. There are few types of PCR tests used in medical field. However, there is only one PCR test that is commonly used in postmortem of brought-in dead patients, which is reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction (RT-PCR). RT-PCR is used to detect severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 (SARS-CoV-2). The specimen is collected at nasopharyngeal swabs as it is more sensitive than oropharyngeal swabs and has higher detection rate. In summary of few research, I found out that nasopharyngeal swabs is more sensitive for SARS-CoV-2 detection than oropharyngeal swabs. Nasopharyngeal swab specimens had higher SARS-CoV-2 load than oropharyngeal swab specimens. Also, nasopharyngeal swabs could reduce droplets production during swabs, especially when combined with other approaches. Postmortem computed tomography (PMCT) is a rapid and non-invasive diagnostic tool for important contributions to the identification of pulmonary findings in the disease with pneumonia, including cases of COVID-19. In few studies, full body scans are feasible and allowed a complete diagnosis in all subjects. However, the main focus of PMCT findings in my final year project is PMCT findings of the lungs. This is because lungs are the most affected organ. More literature exists on clinical cases with CT imaging in COVID-19, where bilateral ground glass opacities and consolidations are described as frequent manifestations in the lungs, with ground glass opacities dominating in the early stages but increasingly showing consolidation as the disease progresses. Changes in lung morphology over time is also described in lung histoarchitecture with changing patterns of diffuse alveolar damage, thickening of interlobular septa and crazy paving patterns, the reverse hollow sign, as well as changes in airways and vessels are also described as occurring patterns. Consolidations are more likely to occur in the peripheral subpleural sections and along the bronchovascular bundles of the lungs. In summary, both antemortem and postmortem imaging allow tracing the stages of pulmonary manifestations in COVID-19. Ultimately, a colorful radiological picture emerges. However, depending on the severity of the disease, later stages are more frequently visible in PMCT, with earlier stages sometimes also occurring here. Moving on to objectives, my general objective for this study is to find out the correlation between PCR results and PMCT findings of lungs Malaysian COVID-19 death in 2020 to 2021. In addition to the objectives, my specific objectives include to find out the differences between PCR results and PMCT findings of the lungs in brought-in-death disease of COVID-19 in Malaysia, and to determine the difference in need for PCR tests and PMCT of the disease in brought-in-death disease of COVID-19. PMCT chest is done to observe the severity of COVID-19 toward lungs. Moreover, PMCT scans is used to evaluate the presence and distribution of pulmonary abnormalities typical of COVID-19 pneumonia, including ground glass opacities, consolidation, and pleural effusion to confirm the postmortem diagnosis. Even with positive swabs, clinical COVID-19 lung findings on PMCT are often not detected. Thus, this study is conducted to see whether PCR results correlates with chest PMCT findings. There are three methodologies types used in this study. First, the study will involve postmortem CT scans on 323 bodies of known age, gender, and race, which underwent postmortem CT and forensic autopsy at the National Institute of Forensic Medicine, Kuala Lumpur Hospital, which is IPFN HKL in 2020 to 2021. All scans will be received in DICOM format and have been anonymized before acceptance. Only gender, age, and data are retained. The scan will then be measured in 2D image using the Infinite system, and measurements will be taken accordingly. Both PCR reports and physical postmortem reports of each sample to be requested from the record office of IPFN to compare the similarities and differences between both autopsies. Lastly, this study is done by literature analysis by researching peer-reviewed journal articles on the relevant topics as well as statistics released by official government to obtain additional data and information. This table shows the expected data collection based on brought-in-death Malaysian disease from COVID-19 between the years 2020 to 2021 and positive PCR results regardless of gender, age, and race. Any other personal information data is kept confidential to protect the privacy and ethics of data collection. The milestone of the final year project starting in March 2022, including the selection of final year project title, few meetings with our supervisor, and literature review writing. In April 2022, ethical approval and NMRR registration application is done to request data from NMRR. In last month, NMRR responded and commented on the submission to make some correction on few forms. In June, proposal editing, proposal recording, and setup of manuscript writing is done. Some of the expected results include more than 200 brought-in-death disease of COVID-19, regardless of gender, age, and sex, are tested positive of COVID-19 based on RT-PCR tests. RT-PCR testing on the day of death and few days after death show the presence of COVID-19 and its stability in the body. Next, more than half of the disease showed abnormalities in PMCT scans of the lungs. The lungs show lighter colored or gray patches rather than appear black because black CT scans show that the lung is healthy. PMCT scans show the presence of consolidations in the pulmonary lobes, presence of pleural effusions in less than 200 PMCT scans. Why less than 200 PMCT scans? Because Pleural effusion is considered a rare manifestation of COVID-19 infection. And lastly, those disease of COVID-19 shows correlation with the findings in PMCT of the lungs. These are my references, and that is all from me. Thank you.